I never thought my own mother would choose a lavish wedding over my future. But there I was, watching 6 years of careful saving threatened by a single conversation. "Family comes first," she said, as if my dreams didn't count as family priorities. That moment changed everything, not just about my relationship with my parents, but about who I understood myself to be. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in Portland as the eldest daughter of Helen and James Chen meant knowing exactly what was expected of me: responsibility, sacrifice, setting a good example. While my younger sister Madison got to be spontaneous and carefree, I was the steady one, the reliable daughter who made sensible choices. And honestly, I was okay with that role. I found comfort in planning, in mapping out my future step by careful step. By 28, I had managed to save nearly $75,000 through careful budgeting, overtime shifts, and living in a tiny apartment. With 2 roommates instead of buying the condo, my mother constantly pointed out I could easily afford with a small loan from them. What my parents didn't know was that every penny was earmarked for my dream: launching my own financial literacy app for young women, an idea I'd been refining for years while working at a mid-sized investment firm. Madison, 3 years younger, had taken a different path. While I was pulling all-nighters earning my MBA, she was changing majors 3 times before settling on communications. While I brown-bagged lunches and tracked expenses on a spreadsheet, Maddie accepted our parents' offer to cover her rent in a stylish downtown apartment. I never begrudged her this. We were just different. She was vibrant, social, the life of every family gathering. I was methodical, sometimes awkwardly direct, more comfortable with numbers than small talk. The dynamic shifted when Madison got engaged to Brandon Taylor last spring. Brandon came from old Portland money, the kind that owned vacation properties, and had family names on university buildings. The wedding planning began immediately, with my mother taking the lead as if orchestrating a royal coronation rather than a ceremony. "The Taylors expect a certain standard," became my mother's mantra during Sunday dinners. "We can't embarrass Madison with anything less than perfect." I nodded along, genuinely happy for my sister. When they asked for my opinion on flower arrangements or menu selections, I gave thoughtful answers. When my mother asked me to take a day off work to accompany them to meet with the 5th potential venue, I rearranged my schedule. Family came first, after all, until that Tuesday evening in April. My parents had asked me to come over for dinner. Just me, not Madison. Unusual, but not alarming. My mother had prepared my favorite meal, her special honey-glazed salmon with roasted vegetables, a warning sign I was too naive to recognize. We made it through the main course with pleasant conversation. Work was going well. Yes, still single. No, not interested in meeting Sandra from book club's nephew. The usual territory. As my father brought out dessert, store-bought cheesecake, not homemade, my mother placed her hand on mine. The gesture felt rehearsed. "Olivia, honey," she began, her voice taking on the gentle tone she used when asking for significant favors. "We need to discuss something important about Madison's wedding." I nodded, fork poised over my cheesecake. "Of course. Is there another vendor meeting?" My father looked down at his plate. Another warning sign. "It's about the finances," my mother continued. "The venue Madison and Brandon have chosen. It's perfect, overlooking the valley with space for 300 guests. And the Taylors have already committed to covering the rehearsal dinner, which will be at the Four Seasons." "That sounds lovely," I said, genuinely meaning it. Madison deserved a beautiful wedding. "The thing is," my mother sighed, "with everything else, the flowers, the band Brandon wants, the destination bachelorette party, it's becoming more than we anticipated." I nodded sympathetically. "I can help look at the budget if you want. Maybe there are some areas where you could..." "We need your savings, Olivia," my mother interrupted, her words landing like a physical blow. "Not all of it, of course. Just 60,000. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Your sister is marrying into the Taylor family," my mother pressed on, as if this explained everything. "This wedding will set the tone for her entire future. We've already taken out a second mortgage, but it's not enough." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You want me to give you $60,000 for Madison's wedding?" "Not give," my father finally spoke, though he still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Think of it as a loan." "A loan," I repeated flatly. "With interest? Repayment terms? A contract?" My mother's expression hardened. "This is family, Olivia, not one of your business transactions. Madison would do the same for you." "Would she?" I wasn't sure, but that wasn't even the point. "That money is for my business," I said carefully. "I've been saving for 6 years." My mother waved this away as if I'd mentioned a vacation fund or shopping spree. "Your little app idea? Honey, you have a perfectly good job already. This is about Madison's actual future." "My app isn't a little idea," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's a comprehensive financial education platform targeting underserved women. I have a business plan, market research, development quotes, and you can pursue that." "Hobby later," my mother cut in. "Right now, your sister needs you. Family comes first." I took a slow breath, trying to process what was happening. "Mom, I support Madison. I'm her maid of honor. I'm helping plan everything. But you're asking me to give up my dream so she can have orchid centerpieces and a champagne fountain." "I'm asking you to be part of this family," my mother said, steel beneath her words. "To stop being so selfish for once." Selfish. The word hit me like ice water. After years of being the responsible one, the dutiful daughter, the sister who never complained when Madison got new clothes while I got hand-me-downs, I was selfish? "I've already told Madison you'd be happy to help," my mother added, her tone suggesting the matter was settled. She was so relieved, Liv. She's been so stressed about the wedding costs. Something inside me, something that had been bending for 28 years, finally snapped. "You told her I would give her my savings without asking me first?" "Don't use that tone," my mother said sharply. "We raised you better than this." "You raised me to be responsible," I said, standing up, my dessert untouched. "To work hard, to plan ahead. And now you're asking me to throw all that away because Madison and Brandon want a wedding they can't afford? The Taylors are expecting—" "I don't care what the Taylors are expecting." My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. "This isn't about them. This is about you asking me to sacrifice everything I've worked for so Madison can impress her in-laws." My father finally looked up. "Olivia, please sit down. We can discuss this rationally." "There's nothing rational about this discussion," I replied, gathering my purse. "And I'm not giving Madison my savings. I'm sorry." My mother's face transformed into something I barely recognized, tight with anger and disappointment. "After everything we've done for you, your sister has supported you through every step of your life, and the one time she needs you—" "The one time?" I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Mom, I've been supporting Madison my entire life. I helped her through college. I edited her papers. I listened to every crisis about every boyfriend. I've been there. But this isn't support. This is asking me to give up my future." "If you walk out that door without agreeing to help your sister," my mother said slowly, each word deliberate, "don't bother coming back." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. In my mother's eyes, I saw no room for compromise, no recognition of my perspective. Just absolute conviction that I was wrong and selfish and disappointing. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said quietly, and walked out. Behind me, I heard my mother call out, "Olivia Chen, you come back here right now!" But for the first time in my life, I didn't turn around. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur. Rain had started falling. How fitting for Portland, pattering against my windshield like the thoughts racing through my mind. Had that conversation really happened? Had my mother actually demanded my life savings for Madison's wedding? Had she truly called me selfish for refusing? When I reached my building, I sat in my car for several long minutes, hands still gripping the steering wheel. My phone had already buzzed 8 times, calls from my mother, then my father, then a text from Madison. How could you do this to me? I turned off my phone. Inside, my roommates Kate and Jasmine were watching a baking show in the living room. One look at my face and Kate muted the TV. Liv? What happened? The whole story came pouring out. The dinner, the demand, my mother's ultimatum. With each detail, my roommates' expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief to outrage. They can't be serious, Jasmine said when I finished. $60,000 for a wedding? That's insane. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And they already told your sister you'd do it? Kate added, handing me a glass of wine. That's manipulation, pure and simple. I took a long sip. My mother thinks I'm being selfish. Maybe I am. Stop that right now, Kate said firmly. There's nothing selfish about protecting your future. Your business plan is brilliant, and you've worked too hard to give it up for centerpieces and party favors. But what if this ruins everything? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if my family never speaks to me again? Jasmine sat beside me on the couch. Liv, they're the ones making that choice, not you. You're just setting a boundary. A boundary. The word felt foreign in relation to my family. In 28 years, I'd never really denied them anything they truly wanted from me. I'd been the peacekeeper, the flexible one, the daughter who could always be counted on to adjust. I need to sleep on this, I said finally, though I already knew morning wouldn't change my decision. Maybe things will look different tomorrow. They didn't. In fact, they got worse. By noon the next day, I had 17 missed calls, 29 text messages, and 1 email from my mother with the subject line, "Financial information for transfer." As if my refusal had been merely a temporary emotional outburst. Madison's messages escalated from hurt. "I thought you'd be happy to help me," to angry. "You've always been jealous of me," to downright cruel. "No wonder you're still single, you only think about yourself." My father sent one text, "Your mother is very upset. Please reconsider." None of them, not one, asked how I felt or acknowledged that they were asking me to sacrifice my dream. A week passed, then 2. I stopped checking my phone for family messages. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects. Anything to avoid thinking about the gaping hole where my family relationships used to be. Then came the email that changed everything. A response to an application I'd submitted months earlier to a selective business incubator program in Chicago. I'd been accepted. Full funding, mentorship, office space, everything I needed to turn my financial literacy app from idea to reality. The catch? I'd need to relocate to Chicago within 30 days. As I stared at the acceptance email, a strange calm settled over me. The universe had offered a clean break, a fresh start away from Portland and its painful associations. Away from running into my sister at our favorite coffee shop. Away from driving past my parents' house and wondering if they still considered me their daughter. I replied to the email immediately. Yes, I accept. That night, I sent one final group message to my parents in Madison. I've accepted a business opportunity in Chicago. I'm moving at the end of the month. I love you all, and the door is open when you're ready to talk. No one responded. 2 weeks later, I packed my life into my Honda Civic and headed east, leaving behind the only city I'd ever called home. The rational part of me knew I was making the right choice. The daughter part of me felt like I was tearing out a piece of my heart and abandoning it on the side of the road. As I crossed state lines, I made myself a promise. I would build something so meaningful, so successful, that one day they would understand. Not just that I'd been right to protect my savings, but that I'd been right to protect my dream. My name is Olivia Chen, and this is the story of how I lost my family, found my purpose, and eventually, in the most unexpected way, got both back again. Chicago greeted me with a heat wave that made the air shimmer above the concrete. Even at 7 p.m., as I pulled into the parking lot of my new apartment building, sweat trickled down my spine. The moving truck with the rest of my belongings wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, so tonight I had only what fit in my car: clothes, laptop, and a small box of essentials. The apartment was on the 14th floor of a converted factory building in the West Loop. Industrial chic, the leasing agent had called it. Translation: exposed brick walls, ductwork on the ceiling, and windows that didn't quite seal properly. But it was mine, and it wasn't in Portland. And right now, that was enough. I dropped my overnight bag on the hardwood floor and walked to the window. The Chicago skyline spread before me, lights flickering on as dusk settled over the city. 6 years ago, I'd visited Chicago for a finance conference and fallen in love with its energy, its architecture, its sense of possibility. Now I was here to stay, at least for the year-long business incubator program. My phone buzzed. For a split second, I thought it might be my mother or Madison, finally reaching out after weeks of silence. But the name on the screen was Ethan Williams, my colleague from Portland who'd become my closest friend over the past 3 years. "How's the Windy City treating you?" he asked when I answered. "Hot, empty, promising," I replied, leaning my forehead against the cool glass of the window. "The apartment's nice. Slightly terrifying, but nice." "Terrifying how?" "Roaches, ghosts, neighbor who plays death metal at 3 a.m.? I smiled despite myself. Terrifying like I just moved 2,000 miles away from everything familiar because my family basically disowned me over money. "Ah, that kind of terrifying," Ethan said, his voice softening. "How are you really doing, Liv?" The question hit me harder than I expected. How was I doing? I hadn't allowed myself to fully process that question since leaving Portland. I paused, trying to find the right words. I'm hurt and angry and a little scared, but also relieved? Like I can finally breathe without worrying about disappointing someone. That's a lot of feelings for one person. Tell me about it. I sighed, watching a plane cross the darkening sky. Have you heard anything? About Madison's wedding plans, I mean. Ethan hesitated. You sure you want to know? No, I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway, then remembered he couldn't see me. Yes, tell me. They've scaled back. Venue changed to the Greenwood Garden instead of that vineyard. Guest list cut by a third. Nothing drastic, but definitely more realistic. A complicated mix of emotions washed over me. Relief that they'd found a solution. Frustration that apparently they could afford a perfectly lovely wedding without my savings after all. And a tiny, petty part of me felt vindicated. Good, I said finally. That's good. Madison will still have a beautiful day. You could still go, you know, Ethan suggested carefully. It's not for another 2 months. Maybe by then. I wasn't uninvited, I cut in. But my mother made it pretty clear where I stand. And honestly, Ethan, I can't imagine sitting there watching Madison walk down the aisle, knowing that everyone in that room has heard some version of how I abandoned my sister in her time of need. Your version matters too, Liv. Not to them, it doesn't. We were quiet for a moment, the weight of distance, both physical and emotional, settling between us. "Enough about my family drama," I said finally. "Tell me what I'm missing at the office. Did Harris finally ask Morgan out?" Ethan let me change the subject, filling me in on office gossip for the next 20 minutes. By the time we hung up, I felt a little less alone in my empty apartment. I ordered Thai food from a place around the corner, ate it sitting cross-legged on the floor, and tried not to check my email for the 7th time that day. Diana Powell, the program director for the business incubator, had promised to send orientation details soon, but my inbox remained stubbornly empty of anything except promotional emails and LinkedIn notifications. After dinner, I unpacked what little I had with me, arranging my toiletries in the bathroom and making up the air mattress that would serve as my bed until the moving truck arrived. As I smoothed the sheets, my hand brushed against something in the pocket of my hoodie, a small jade pendant on a silver chain. My grandmother's necklace, which my mother had given me on my 16th birthday. "Great-grandmother Lynn wore this through the Cultural Revolution," she'd told me, fastening it around my neck, "through war and famine and starting over in a new country." Chen women are resilient, Olivia. We endure. I sat on the edge of the air mattress, pendant cradled in my palm. Was this what endurance looked like? Running away to a new city because I couldn't face the conflict? Or was I finally breaking a pattern, standing firm in my worth after years of yielding? I slipped the necklace over my head, the jade cool against my skin. Maybe both could be true. Sleep came fitfully that night, interrupted by unfamiliar city sounds and the nagging feeling that I'd forgotten something important. When my alarm blared at 6 a.m., I was already awake, watching early morning light filter through blinds I hadn't yet figured out how to close properly. The email from Diana Powell arrived while I was brushing my teeth. "Welcome to Emerge Chicago. Orientation begins at 9 a.m. sharp at our Fulton Market facility. Business casual attire. Bring your laptop and prepare to pitch your concept in 90 seconds to your cohort." 90 seconds. To summarize 3 years of research, planning, and passion in the time it takes to microwave a cup of coffee. I'd practiced longer versions of my pitch dozens of times, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, but never just 90 seconds. What could I possibly cut from the presentation I'd already distilled to its essence? 90 minutes later, I stood outside, a converted warehouse with "Emerge Chicago" emblazoned across its brick facade in bold modern lettering. Through the glass doors, I could see a bustling lobby filled with people about my age, all clutching laptop bags and coffee cups, all looking simultaneously confident and terrified, just like me. I smoothed down my navy blazer, took a deep breath, and walked in. The lobby smelled of coffee and ambition, that peculiar mix of anxiety and determination that permeates spaces where people are trying to make their mark. A tall woman with close-cropped silver hair and statement earrings stood near the reception desk, checking names off a tablet. "Diana Powell," she said when I approached, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. "You must be Olivia Chen. Your application was exceptional." "Thank you," I replied, hoping my palm wasn't sweaty. "I'm excited to be here." Diana smiled, the expression warming her otherwise serious face. "Good. Excitement fuels innovation. Follow me. We're gathering in the main hub for introductions." The main hub turned out to be a vast open space dotted with clusters of modern furniture, whiteboards, and tables. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline, and motivational quotes adorned the exposed brick walls. About 30 people milled around, some already deep in conversation, others scrolling through phones or laptops. "Everyone!" Diana's voice cut through the chatter. "Find a seat, please. It's time to begin." We arranged ourselves in a loose circle of chairs and couches. Diana stood in the center, commanding attention without effort. "Welcome to Emerge Chicago's 12th cohort," she began. "You're here because your ideas have potential, but potential without execution is just a dream. Over the next year, we'll help you turn those dreams into viable businesses. Some of you will succeed, some of you won't. All of you will learn more than you can imagine. A ripple of nervous energy passed through the group. We'll start with introductions, Diana continued. 90 seconds each. Your name, your concept, and what problem you're solving. Jessica, we'll begin with you. A woman with a sleek ponytail and glasses stood, launching into a polished pitch about sustainable packaging for e-commerce. She was followed by a man developing noise-canceling technology for urban apartments, then a pair of siblings with a farm-to-table meal kit concept. As each person spoke, I mentally rehearsed my own pitch, making tiny adjustments. Too much background, detail. Cut the statistics about wage gaps. Focus on the solution, not the problem. Olivia Chen, Diana called finally. You're up. I stood, pushing aside thoughts of my family, of Portland, of everything except the business I'd moved here to build. Looking around the circle of attentive faces, I began. 7 out of 10 women say they wish they knew more about investing and financial planning, but traditional financial education is designed by men, for men, with masculine metaphors like beating the market and aggressive growth strategies. I paused, making eye contact with several people in the circle. I'm Olivia Chen, and Finale is a financial education platform designed specifically for women. Through interactive modules, community support, and personalized coaching, we help women build confidence in their financial decisions. Our approach emphasizes long-term security over quick gains, community over competition, and incremental growth over high-risk strategies. We're not just educating, we're changing the relationship women have with money, one user at a time. I glanced at Diana, who nodded almost imperceptibly, encouraging me to continue. I've spent 3 years developing this concept alongside my work in investment management, conducting market research and creating prototype modules. With Emerge's support, I'm ready to build an MVP and launch to our first user cohort within 6 months. Because financial independence isn't just about numbers in a bank account, it's about giving women the power to shape their own futures. I sat down, heart racing. Had that been 90 seconds? Had I spoken too quickly? Too slowly? Had I covered everything essential? Thank you, Olivia, Diana said. Powerful concept with clear differentiation. Next, Marcus Rivera. As Marcus began his pitch about urban vertical farming, I exhaled slowly. I'd done it. First hurdle cleared. The rest of orientation passed in a blur of information, introductions, and coffee. By 5 p.m., my head was spinning with deadlines, expectations, and the names of 29 other entrepreneurs I was now in competition and community with. Diana caught me as I was gathering my things to leave. Walk with me, Olivia, she said, heading toward a row of windows overlooking the city. It wasn't a request. Your concept resonates with me, she said when we reached the far end of the room. Financial literacy for women is a critical gap in the market, but I'm concerned about your timeline. I blinked, caught off guard. My timeline? 6 months to MVP is aggressive for a solo founder with no technical background. Do you have developers lined up? User experience designers? Content creators? I have leads, I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. I had researched firms I could potentially hire if I had the funding. And I'm not afraid of a learning curve. Diana studied me, her expression unreadable. Courage is admirable. Realism is essential. I've seen too many promising concepts fail because founders bit off more than they could chew. She paused. I'm assigning you a priority mentor, Raymond Cho. He's built and sold 2 successful education platforms. He'll help you develop a realistic roadmap. Thank you, I said, uncertain whether this was good news or a sign that Diana already doubted me. One more thing, Diana added. Personal issues derail startups more often than business challenges. I noticed you've just relocated from Portland. Any loose ends there I should know about? The question caught me off guard. Had she somehow sensed the family turmoil I'd left behind? Or was this standard diligence? Nothing that will affect my work here, I replied, perhaps too quickly. Diana held my gaze for a long moment. Good, she said finally. Because what we do here requires full focus. Divided attention leads to diluted results. I understand. I hope so. She handed me a business card. Raymond will contact you tomorrow. Be prepared with questions. As Diana walked away, I felt a mixture of gratitude and unease. She believed in my concept enough to assign me a priority mentor, but she also seemed to be watching for cracks in my foundation. I couldn't afford to show any. Back in my apartment that evening, I found the moving truck had arrived, leaving boxes stacked throughout the space. I should have started unpacking, should have organized my workspace for the weeks ahead, but exhaustion hit me like a physical force. I navigated through the cardboard maze to the kitchen, found a box labeled wine glasses, and poured myself a generous amount of Cabernet from a bottle I'd packed in my car. Leaning against the kitchen counter, I scrolled through my phone out of habit. One missed call from a Portland number I didn't recognize. 3 new LinkedIn connection requests from people I'd met at orientation. And one text from my father. Your mother found your apartment key in the spare room. Should we mail it to you? No, how are you? No, we miss you. Just a practical question about a key I'd forgotten I still had. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, yes please. 1420, W. Fulton St. Apt 1407, Chicago. 62607, thank you. I set my phone down and took a long sip of wine. This was my reality now. Practical exchanges about forgotten keys. A new city. A new beginning. I couldn't afford to dwell on what I'd left behind. The next morning, I woke to an email from Raymond Cho, my assigned mentor. Coffee, 8 a.m., Sawada, don't be late. Sawada turned out to be a coffee shop 15 minutes walk from my apartment. When I arrived at 7:55, slightly out of breath from trying to navigate unfamiliar streets, a man in his early 40s was already seated at a corner table, typing rapidly on a sleek laptop. He wore simple jeans and a gray t-shirt that looked more expensive than my entire outfit, and his graying temples contrasted with an otherwise youthful face. Raymond Cho? I asked, approaching his table. He glanced up, then at his watch. Olivia. Chen, 5 minutes early. Good start. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Have you ordered? Not yet. Their military latte is exceptional. I've taken the liberty of ordering one for you. I sat, noting the empty cup already in front of him. You've been here a while. Since 6:30. I like to use coffee. Shops as my office until the morning rush. Ambient noise improves cognitive function. He closed his laptop. Diana says your concept has potential, but your timeline is fantasy. His directness caught me off guard. She's right, he continued. 6 months to MVP is delusional for what you're proposing, but delusion is the starting point of most successful ventures. He leaned forward. Tell me why women need their own financial education platform. And so began the most intense 90 minutes of my professional life. Raymond fired questions at me like bullets, challenging every assumption, poking holes in my business model, questioning my market research methodology. There was no small talk, no warm-up, just relentless interrogation. By the time our second coffees arrived, I'd abandoned any pretense of polite conversation. I defended my concept passionately, citing studies, market gaps, and user interviews I'd conducted. When Raymond suggested my target demographic was too broad, I pushed back with segmentation data. When he questioned my revenue model, I walked him through 3 alternate scenarios I'd developed. Finally, after what felt like hours, Raymond sat back and regarded me with something like approval. You've done your homework. Yes, I said, simply. But homework doesn't build products. Do you code? No, but UX design skills? I've taken some courses, but financial certifications? Series 7 and 65, and I'm halfway through my CFP. This seemed to give him pause. That's more than most fintech founders, still not enough. He pulled a notebook from his bag and scribbled something. Here's what you need: a technical co-founder, a content strategist, and a more realistic timeline. 12 months minimum to MVP, 18 more likely. I felt deflated. The incubator program is only 12 months. So, companies don't magically mature when programs end. He tore the page from his notebook and slid it across the table. It contained 3 names with phone numbers. These people might be interested in what you're building. Jennifer Park is a brilliant developer who's between projects. Marcus Layton creates financial content that doesn't put people to sleep. Ava Rodriguez knows UX for financial platforms better than anyone in Chicago. I stared at the paper, then back at Raymond. Why are you giving me these contacts? Because Diana asked me to mentor you, and I don't waste my time on projects destined to fail. He stood, gathering his things. Call them today, all 3. Tell them I sent you. Thank you, I said, still processing the whirlwind conversation. When should we meet again? After you've spoken to all 3 contacts, email me your revised timeline and budget based on their input. He slung his bag over his shoulder. And Olivia? Whatever personal baggage you brought from Portland, deal with it. I can smell unresolved conflict from a mile away, and it's the death of focus. With that parting shot, he left, leaving me sitting alone with cold coffee and a list of potential collaborators. How had he known? Was it written all over my face that I'd fled a family conflict? Or was this just a standard warning he gave all founders? Either way, he was right. I needed to compartmentalize, to put Portland and all its associated heartache in a box so I could focus on building something meaningful here in Chicago. I spent the rest of the day in a coffee shop with better Wi-Fi, researching Raymond's contacts and drafting careful emails to each. By evening, I had meetings scheduled with all 3 for the following week. Progress, even if it meant admitting my original timeline had been unrealistic. The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of meetings, workshops, and late nights hunched over my laptop. The Emerge facility became my second home. I arrived early each morning and often stayed until the security guard gently suggested it was time to leave. My apartment remained half unpacked, boxes serving as impromptu tables and chairs. Jennifer Park, the developer Raymond had recommended, agreed to join Finale as a technical co-founder after our second meeting. Her background in both finance and technology made her the perfect partner, and her blunt assessment of what we could realistically build in a year helped me refine my vision into something achievable. Banking apps use masculine imagery, aggressive language and interfaces designed by men for men, she said during one of our planning sessions. We can do better, but we need to be smart about scope. Marcus Layton, the content strategist, signed on as a consultant, helping us develop a content roadmap that would complement our technical build. And Ava Rodriguez, after initially declining, due to other commitments, agreed to review our UX designs on a monthly basis. Slowly, Finale was becoming more than just an idea in my head. It was taking shape, evolving through collaboration, becoming something more nuanced and powerful than I had initially imagined. Diana Powell checked in regularly, sometimes offering resources, sometimes challenging our assumptions. Raymond's mentorship sessions remained intense, but grew more constructive as we demonstrated progress. And throughout it all, my phone remained conspicuously silent when it came to family. My father had texted a terse key sent after mailing my apartment key, and that had been it. No calls from my mother, no updates about the wedding from Madison. It was as if I'd ceased to exist in their world the moment I'd refused to fund the vineyard venue. I threw myself into work to fill the void, often staying at the Emerge facility until midnight. fueled by determination and the particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people, but missing the ones who knew you first. One evening in late June, about 6 weeks after I'd arrived in Chicago, I was working late at the Emerge facility, fine-tuning the wireframes for our first prototype. Most of the cohort had left hours earlier, but a few other night owls remained scattered throughout the space. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Go home, Chen. The wireframes will still be there tomorrow." I smiled, about to reply, when an incoming call interrupted me. Madison's name flashed on the screen. My heart leapt to my throat. After weeks of silence, why was she calling now? Had something happened to our parents? Or was this finally an olive branch? I answered, voice carefully neutral. "Hello?" "Turn, on your camera," Madison demanded without preamble. Her voice was slurred, words running together. "I want to see your face when I tell you what you've done." She was drunk. The realization hit me like a slap. "Madison, it's late. Maybe we should talk tomorrow when—" "Don't you dare tell me when to talk to you," she snapped. "You don't get to disappear to Chicago and then dictate terms." I closed my laptop, acutely aware of the few other entrepreneurs still in the space. "Let me step outside," I murmured, gathering my things and heading for the door. "We had to cancel the vineyard," Madison continued as I walked. "Do you know how embarrassing that was? Having to tell Brandon's family we couldn't afford the venue we'd already announced? Having to downgrade everything because my sister decided her stupid app was more important than my wedding?" The night air was warm and humid as I stepped onto the sidewalk. Traffic hummed in the distance. "I'm sorry you had to change venues," I said carefully. "But my app isn't stupid, and my savings aren't your wedding fund." "You're so selfish," Madison's voice cracked. "You've always been selfish, Liv. Always the smart one, the responsible one, looking down on me for getting help from Mom and Dad." "That's not true," I protested. "I've never looked down on you." "You've never had to. Everyone else does it for you. Why can't you be more like your sister? Olivia never needed help with her tuition. Olivia manages her money so well." Madison's voice took on a mocking tone. "Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow?" I leaned against the building, stunned. Was that how she saw our relationship? Me casting a shadow over her? It had always felt like the opposite. Like I was the reliable but forgotten sister while Madison shone. "I didn't know you felt that way," I said quietly. "Of course you didn't. You were too busy being perfect." Madison's voice broke. "And now you've ruined everything. The wedding's in 3 weeks and it's all wrong. The venue is too small, the flowers are cheap, and Brandon's mother keeps making these little comments about making do." Guilt and frustration warred within me. "Madison, Save it," she cut me off. "I didn't call for your apologies. I called to tell you not to come to the wedding. Mom put your invitation in the mail last week, but I want you to know it was a mistake. You're not welcome." The words hit like a physical blow. Not welcome at my own sister's wedding. The final severing of family ties. "If that's what you want," I managed. "It is." Madison's voice hardened despite the slurring. "You chose your precious business over family. Now live with it." The call ended abruptly. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, phone still pressed to my ear, as if waiting for more devastating words to pour out. A police siren wailed in the distance. Someone laughed from an open window above. Life in Chicago continued around me while I tried to process what had just happened. My sister had officially uninvited me from her wedding. My mother had apparently sent an invitation anyway, creating even more confusion. And somehow, in Madison's mind, I had morphed from supportive older sister to villainous dream crusher. I slumped onto a nearby bench, feeling the weight of distance. Not just the 2,000 miles between Chicago and Portland, but the growing emotional chasm between me and the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Family is complicated, a voice said from behind me. I turned to find Diana Powell standing in the doorway of the Emerge building, silver hair gleaming under the streetlights. "You heard?" I asked, mortified. "Enough." She moved to sit beside me on the bench. Siblings can be particularly challenging. The competition, the comparison, the complicated history. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice breaking. "I have 4 sisters," Diana continued, gazing out at the street. "Growing up, we fought like cats trapped in a sack. When I started my first company, 2 of them didn't speak to me for years. They were convinced I thought I was better than them." "Did you?" I asked. "Of course not. I was terrified, working 16-hour days, borrowing money to make payroll." She shrugged. "But perception becomes reality when emotions are involved." We sat in companionable silence for a moment. "What happened with your sisters?" I finally asked. "Time happened. Success happened. Failure happened." Diana smiled faintly. "Life has a way of equalizing things. Now we're closer than ever. One sister even became my CFO. That's hopeful. It's truthful." Diana stood. "Family conflicts are rarely about what they seem to be about on the surface. Your sister's wedding venue? That's not the real issue. What is then? That's for you to figure out." She nodded toward the Emerge building. "But not tonight, and not at the expense of what you're building here. Go home, Olivia. Get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day." As Diana walked back into the building, I remained on the bench a moment longer, absorbing her words. Family conflicts are rarely about what they seem to be about. What was my conflict with Madison and my parents really about, beneath the surface? Tension of wedding costs and savings accounts? Control? Identity? The changing dynamics of a family as children become adults with their own priorities? I didn't have answers yet. But Diana was right about one thing. I wouldn't find them tonight, sitting on a bench in Chicago while my family prepared for a wedding in Portland without me. I stood, gathered my things, and began the walk back to my apartment. Tomorrow would be another day of building, of moving forward, of creating something that mattered. And maybe someday, my family would understand why I had to protect it. The invitation arrived exactly as Madison had said it would. An elegant cream envelope with my name in gold calligraphy. Inside, a beautifully designed card announced the Union of Madison Chen and Brandon Taylor, requesting the honor of my presence at the Greenwood Garden in Portland. I placed it on my kitchen counter, propped against a coffee mug, and stared at it while eating my morning oatmeal. The contrast was almost comical. This symbol of family tradition and celebration, surrounded by half-unpacked moving boxes and takeout containers, 2 worlds that no longer seemed compatible. Madison's drunken call had made her wishes clear. I wasn't welcome. But my mother had sent the invitation anyway, creating a painful ambiguity. Was this an olive branch? A social obligation? A way to later say, well, we invited her when relatives asked about my absence? I pushed the invitation aside and focused on my laptop screen, where the day's schedule awaited. A morning meeting with Jennifer to finalize our technical roadmap. Lunch with a potential investor Diana had connected us with. An afternoon workshop on user acquisition strategies. And a check-in with Raymond at 5. No time to dwell on weddings I wouldn't attend. I arrived at the Emerge facility 15 minutes early, as had become my habit. The space was quiet at 7:45 a.m., just a few other early risers setting up for the day. I claimed my usual spot, a corner table with good lighting and proximity to both the coffee station and a whiteboard. Jennifer arrived at exactly 8 a.m., laptop under one arm, massive coffee in hand. At 35, she was a few years older than me, with straight black hair that fell to her shoulders and a no-nonsense demeanor that matched her coding style. Elegant, efficient, and uncompromising. "You look like you didn't sleep," she observed, settling into the chair across from me. Thanks for the compliment, I replied dryly. I was up late working on the investor deck. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. The one for the lunch meeting? The one we finalized 3 days ago? I sighed. I made some tweaks to the revenue projections. Olivia. Jennifer set her coffee down with deliberate care. The projections were already conservative. You can't keep second-guessing every number. I just want to be prepared for any questions. No, you're obsessing because something else is bothering you. Jennifer had an unnerving ability to see through my professional facade. In the 2 months we'd been working together, she'd become not just a business partner, but something close to a friend, the kind who didn't hesitate to call me out. I hesitated, then pulled the wedding invitation from my bag. My sister's getting married in 2 weeks. Jennifer took the invitation, examined it, then looked back at me. And she called me drunk to tell me I'm not welcome, but my mother sent this anyway. Jennifer handed the invitation back. Family drama, the startup killer. It's not going to kill anything, I said firmly. I'm not going to the wedding. Are you sure about that? Jennifer's gaze was steady, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're losing sleep over it. Before I could respond, a notification popped up on my phone. A calendar reminder for our investor lunch. We should focus on the technical roadmap, I said, redirecting the conversation. We have that lunch meeting in 4 hours. Jennifer allowed the change of subject, but her expression made it clear we'd be returning to the wedding discussion later. The morning flew by in a flurry of product decisions. Finale was evolving from concept to reality, with wireframes becoming actual screens and theoretical user flows taking concrete shape. We were building something real, something that would help women gain confidence with money and investing, in a way traditional financial education had failed to do. When Jennifer stepped away to take a call, I found myself staring at the wedding invitation again. 2 weeks from Saturday. I checked flights to Portland almost unconsciously. There were still seats available, not too expensive. I could fly in the morning of the ceremony, slip into the back row, and fly back the next day. Minimal disruption to my work schedule. I closed the browser tab quickly when Jennifer returned. This was ridiculous. Madison had explicitly uninvited me. My mother hadn't called once since I'd moved to Chicago. My father's only communication had been about returning a forgotten key. I needed to focus on the path I'd chosen, not the family relationships that had fractured when I refused to sacrifice my dream. The investor lunch went better than expected. Jonathan Green, a partner at Lakefront Ventures, was genuinely interested in the gap we were addressing in financial education for women. He asked challenging but fair questions about our market sizing, go-to-market strategy, and competitive differentiation. I like that you're not trying to build another robo-advisor or banking app, he said as we finished our meal. Education is the foundation of good financial decisions, but it's chronically undervalued in the fintech space. Exactly, I agreed eagerly. Most financial apps assume users already understand investment concepts. They focus on execution, not education. And your target demographic is underserved, Jonathan nodded. But I have to ask, why is this personal for you? Every successful founder I've backed has had a deeper motivation than market opportunity. The question caught me off guard. I'd prepared detailed answers about market size, technical feasibility, and revenue models, but not about my personal motivation. My grandmother came to America with nothing, I found myself saying. She cleaned houses while raising 3 kids alone after my grandfather died. She was brilliant with money, stretching every dollar, saving consistently despite her minimal income. But she never invested a penny because she didn't understand the stock market and was afraid of being taken advantage of. I paused, surprised by the emotion welling up as I continued. By the time I was old enough to explain investing to her, it was too late for compound growth to work its magic. She died with money in a savings account earning 0. 1% interest, safe, but stagnant. I keep thinking about how different her retirement could have been if someone had explained investing in a way that made sense to her, in language that didn't intimidate her. Jonathan nodded slowly. That's the kind of story that sustains you through the hard days of building a company. He signaled for the check. I'd like to continue this conversation next week. Have your full pitch deck ready. The partners will want to see it. As we parted ways outside the restaurant, Jonathan shook my hand. One more thing, Olivia. This level of commitment to your company, it comes with personal sacrifices. Make sure the ones you're making are worth it. I blinked, wondering if Diana had mentioned my family situation to him. I believe they are, I replied. His smile was kind but knowing. Just remember, no one on their deathbed ever says, "I wish I'd spent more time at the office." The comment stayed with me throughout the afternoon workshop and into my check-in with Raymond. As we reviewed our progress against milestones, I found my attention drifting repeatedly to the wedding invitation tucked in my bag. "You're distracted," Raymond observed bluntly, interrupting his own explanation of user acquisition funnels. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then pulled out the invitation. "My sister's getting married, in Portland, 2 weeks from now." Raymond glanced at the invitation, then back at me. And I'm not sure if I should go. There's complicated. Family history. There always is. Raymond leaned back in his chair. Is your presence at this wedding going to materially impact the success of finale? What? No, of course not. Then it's not a business decision. It's a personal one. He pushed the invitation back toward me. I don't give personal advice. I felt a flare of irritation. You told me to deal with my Portland baggage because it would affect my focus. Exactly. Deal with it, whatever that means for you. Raymond checked his watch. Our time's up. Figure out the wedding, Olivia. Come back next week with your full attention. Raymond's abrupt dismissal left me frustrated, but also forced me to confront the question I'd been avoiding. Did I want to go to Madison's wedding? Not should I go, but did I want to? The answer surprised me. Yes. Despite everything, the cruel words, the withdrawal of support, the drunken phone call, I wanted to see my sister get married. Not because I craved reconciliation or needed family approval, but because Madison was still my sister. Her wedding was a significant moment in her life. And someday, perhaps years from now, I didn't want either of us to look back and regret my absence. That evening, I booked a flight to Portland for the wedding weekend. Then I drafted a simple email to my mother. I received the invitation. I'll be attending the ceremony but will return to Chicago the following day. Please let me know if there's anything specific I should know about the arrangements. Short, practical, unemotional. No mention of Madison's call or the months of silence. Just a straightforward acceptance of the invitation. I hit send before I could overthink it, then texted Jennifer. Booked a flight to Portland for my sister's wedding. You were right. I needed to make a decision. Her reply came seconds later. About time. Now maybe you'll stop revising those projections at 2 a.m. The next morning, I had a response from my mother, equally brief. Reception seating. Chart already finalized. We'll add you to table 8 with cousins. Ceremony starts at 4. Don't be late. No. We're glad you're coming. No. We've missed you. Just practical information about seating charts and timing. But it was communication, at least. A tiny crack in the wall of silence. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Finale's development accelerated as we prepared for our first closed beta test. Lakefront Ventures expressed serious interest after our pitch, initiating due diligence for a potential seed investment. Diana selected me to represent Emerge Chicago at a major tech conference in September. Everything was moving forward, except my relationship with my family. My mother and I exchanged a few more terse emails about wedding logistics, but nothing deeper. My father remained silent. Madison didn't acknowledge that I was coming. Before I knew it, I was boarding a plane back to Portland, a garment bag containing my one decent cocktail dress slung over my arm. As the plane lifted off from Chicago, I felt a strange sense of disorientation. I was going home, but it no longer felt like home. The flight attendant's voice crackled over the speaker. "We've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The local time in Portland is 9:47 a.m. I gazed out the window at the patchwork landscape below. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined being in this position, flying across the country to attend a wedding I'd been explicitly uninvited from, with a growing startup and potential venture funding in Chicago. 6 months ago, I'd been the dutiful daughter, still trying to earn family approval. Now I was returning on my own terms, neither seeking reconciliation nor harboring resentment. Just showing up as myself, the self I was becoming in Chicago, not the self my family had expected me to be. I'd booked a room at a hotel near the wedding venue rather than staying at my parents' house. After checking in, I spent the afternoon working on my laptop, responding to emails, and reviewing the latest designs Jennifer had sent over. Work was a comfort, a reminder of the life I was building, regardless of how this weekend unfolded. At 3:15, I began getting ready for the ceremony. The dress I'd chosen was simple but elegant, navy blue with a subtle shimmer, conservative enough for a family wedding but still reflective of my personal style. I wore my grandmother's jade pendant, a connection to family heritage that transcended current tensions. The Greenwood Garden was exactly as Ethan had described it, not as grand as the vineyard would have been, but beautiful in its own right. A manicured lawn stretched toward a rose-covered pergola where the ceremony would take place. White chairs were arranged in neat rows, already filling with guests in formal attire. I arrived deliberately close to the start time, slipping into a seat in the back row just as the string quartet began playing. No one in my immediate family would see me here. They'd be in the preparation areas or, in my father's case, waiting. To walk Madison down the aisle, people around me exchanged curious glances. I recognized a few faces, distant relatives, family friends, who clearly hadn't expected to see me. I offered polite smiles, but kept to myself, fixing my attention on the pergola where Brandon and the officiant now stood. The music changed, signaling the processional. Bridesmaids in pale pink dresses walked slowly down the aisle, followed by a flower girl scattering rose petals. And then the bride's music began, and everyone stood. Madison appeared on our father's arm, radiant in a classic white gown that complemented her figure perfectly. Her face was partially obscured by a sheer veil, but I could see she was smiling. My father looked solemn and proud as he escorted her toward her future husband. They passed within feet of me, neither noticing my presence in the back row. I felt a complicated surge of emotion. Love for my sister, sadness for our estrangement, pride in how beautiful she looked on this important day. The ceremony was brief but touching. Madison and Brandon had written their own vows, and as they exchanged promises of support and partnership, I found myself blinking back unexpected tears. Whatever our differences, I wanted this happiness for my sister, wanted her to find joy and fulfillment in her marriage. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd erupted in applause. The newlyweds kissed, then turned to face their guests with beaming smiles. For just a moment as they walked back down the aisle, Madison's eyes met mine. Her step faltered slightly, the only indication she hadn't known I would be there. But she recovered quickly, squeezing Brandon's arm and continuing toward the garden exit where photos would be taken. I remained seated as the rows emptied, people streaming toward the cocktail hour that would precede the reception. Only when the garden was nearly empty did I finally stand, smoothing my dress and preparing to join the awkward conversations that surely awaited me. "You came," I turned to find my father standing a few feet away, looking older than I remembered. His hair seemed grayer, the lines around his eyes deeper. "Mom said I could," I replied, unsure what else to say. He nodded, hands in his pockets. "Madison doesn't know." I gathered that. "I'm sorry if it causes problems." "No, it's—" He hesitated, searching for words. "It's good you're here, Olivia. It's your sister's wedding." The simple acknowledgement that my presence was appropriate, expected even, felt more significant than it should have. "How are you, Dad?" "Managing." He glanced toward the reception area. "Business has been challenging. Your mother's had some health concerns. Nothing serious, just blood pressure. The usual." I nodded, absorbing this information, these glimpses into the life I'd left behind. "I'm sorry to hear that." An awkward silence stretched between us. There was too much to say and no easy place to start. "I should join the receiving line," my father finally said. "Your mother will want to know you're here." "Of course." I nodded, relieved and disappointed at the brevity of our interaction. "I'll see you at the reception." As my father walked away, I realized how much I'd been holding my breath through our entire exchange. No mention of my business, my move to Chicago, or the conflict that had precipitated it all. Just polite small talk, the kind you might exchange with a distant acquaintance, not a daughter. The cocktail hour was a study in careful navigation. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and positioned myself at the edge of the gathering, observing more than participating. A few relatives approached with cautious greetings. "Olivia, we didn't know you were coming. How's Chicago treating you? Your mother mentioned you're starting some kind of business?" I offered vague, pleasant responses, steering conversations away from anything too personal. No one mentioned the family conflict directly, though. Knowing glances and careful phrasing made it clear that rumors had circulated. My mother found me as the cocktail hour was ending. She approached with the determined stride I'd known all my life, her expression carefully neutral. "Olivia," she said, stopping before me, "I'm glad you could make it." The words were correct, but the tone was formal, the way she might greet a business associate rather than a daughter. "Thank you for sending the invitation," I replied, matching her formality. "The ceremony was beautiful." Yes, it came together well, despite the challenges. A hint of accusation colored the last word, but she didn't elaborate. Instead, she glanced at my dress with a professional assessment. "You look nice. Table 8 is in the far corner of the tent near the band." I remember. "Thank you." She nodded, then hesitated as if there were more to say. For a moment, I thought she might mention my business, ask about my life in Chicago, or at least acknowledge the months of silence. Instead, she simply said, "Try the salmon if you have the chance. It's excellent," and moved away to greet other guests. The reception was a beautiful affair, despite the scaled-back venue. White lanterns hung from the tent ceiling, tables were elegantly set with floral centerpieces, and the band played a perfect mix of classics and contemporary songs. From my seat at table 8, indeed positioned in the far corner, I watched Madison and Brandon's first dance, their faces alight with joy. My cousins at the table were cordial, but clearly uncertain how to interact with me given the family tension. Conversation stayed safely in the realm of weather, recent movies, and reminiscences about childhood holidays. Nothing that might venture into uncomfortable territory. I was midway through the salmon my mother had recommended. It was indeed excellent, when Madison appeared beside my table. She wore the same radiant smile she'd had all evening, but her eyes were guarded as they met mine. "You came," she said, echoing our father's earlier observation. I set down my fork. "Mom sent an invitation." Despite what I said on the phone, Madison's smile remained fixed, though her voice lowered so the other table occupants couldn't hear. I was drunk and angry. "I know," I said simply. It's your wedding day, Madison. I wanted to be here for you. Something flickered in. Her expression, surprise perhaps, or a glimpse of the sister I'd grown up with beneath the bride persona she'd maintained all day. Well, you are, and I appreciate it. You don't have to say that. I know. She glanced over her shoulder where Brandon was engaged in conversation with his parents. I should get back to making rounds, but Liv, thank you for coming. She didn't wait for a response, already moving toward the next table, the perfect bride making sure to greet all her guests. But for the first time since our estrangement began, I felt a tiny glimmer of hope that someday, not today, but someday, we might find our way back to being sisters again. The rest of the reception passed pleasantly enough. I danced with a cousin during the fast songs, avoided the dance floor during the father-daughter and mother-son dances, and declined when the DJ called for all family members to join a group number. I was technically family, but the distinction between family and attending family member felt important to maintain. I slipped out before the cake cutting, leaving a card with a generous check on the gift table. It wasn't the $60,000 my parents had demanded, but it was enough to demonstrate that I did care about Madison's happiness, even if I couldn't sacrifice my future for her wedding. Back in my hotel room, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the bed, emotionally drained but also strangely at peace. I'd shown up. I'd navigated the awkward interactions. I'd seen my sister get married. It hadn't been warm or particularly pleasant, but it had been civilized, a stark contrast to the heated ultimatums and tearful departures 6 months earlier. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "How's the wedding drama? Business still intact?" I smiled, appreciating her direct approach. Wedding survived, business intact, flying back tomorrow. Good. We have a user testing session scheduled for Tuesday, and Lakefront wants another meeting. The message was a welcome reminder of the life waiting for me in Chicago, the purpose I'd protected, the future I was building. Tomorrow I'd leave Portland again, but this time without the weight of unresolved conflict. Nothing had been solved exactly, but something had shifted slightly. A door had been left ajar instead of slammed shut. I fell asleep that night thinking, not about family tension or wedding politics, but about the user interface designs Jennifer and I would test next week. About the questions Lakefront Ventures might ask in our follow-up meeting. About the conference presentation I needed to prepare for September. About the future I'd chosen, the future that was becoming more real with each passing day. The Chicago fall arrived with a symphony of color and a crisp edge to the morning air. 4 months had passed since Madison's wedding, and finale was no longer just an idea sketched on coffee shop napkins. It was a functioning platform with 300 beta testers and growing interest from investors. I stepped out of the Uber in front of the Palmer House Hilton, straightening my blazer and mentally rehearsing my presentation one last time. The Midwest Women in Finance Conference had selected me as a featured speaker, a recognition that still felt surreal. 300 industry professionals would be listening to me talk about financial education for women. 300 potential partners, mentors, and advocates. "You've got this," Jennifer had texted that morning. "Just don't forget to breathe between sentences." The hotel lobby was a buzz of activity, attendees in professional attire checking in, speakers huddled in corners reviewing notes, event staff directing traffic. I followed signs to the speaker registration desk, where I received a badge declaring me Olivia Chen, founder and CEO, Finale. Seeing my name and title printed so officially gave me a momentary thrill. 6 months ago, I'd been an investment manager with a dream. Now I was a founder, a CEO, a speaker at a respected industry conference. The transformation still startled me sometimes. "Ms. Chen?" A conference organizer approached, tablet in hand. "Your session is in the grand ballroom at 11. We'd like you to arrive 15 minutes early for microphone testing and to meet the moderator." I nodded, accepting the detailed schedule she handed me. Thank you. I'll be there. Also, she added with a smile, we've had significant interest in your session. We've moved it to the larger ballroom to accommodate attendance. That was unexpected and slightly terrifying. Larger ballroom? How many people are you expecting? Based on the app registrations, approximately 500. 500. My presentation had been prepared with 300 in mind. 500 faces watching me, judging whether Finale was truly innovative or just another fintech flash in the pan. I found a quiet corner in the hotel's ornate lobby and called Jennifer. They've moved us to the larger ballroom, I said without preamble when she answered. 500 people, Jennifer. That's fantastic, she replied, genuine excitement in her voice. It's terrifying. What if I freeze? What if they hate the platform? What if... Olivia, Jennifer cut in firmly. Stop. You know this material better than anyone. You've been living and breathing female financial empowerment for years. And the platform speaks for itself. Our beta metrics are incredible. She was right, of course. Our early data was promising. 87% of users completed the introductory modules, compared to the industry standard of less than 40% for financial education programs. User retention after 30 days was holding steady at 72%. And the qualitative feedback had been overwhelmingly positive, with women reporting significant increases in their confidence about investing and financial planning. You're right, I admitted, breathing deeply. I know this material. I believe in what we're building. Exactly. Now go show those 500 people why they should believe in it too. After we hung up, I found my way to a coffee shop inside the hotel, ordered the strongest brew they offered, and opened my laptop to review my presentation once more. As the slides flickered past, I felt a surge of pride in what Jennifer and I had built. Finale wasn't just a business, it was a mission, a solution to a problem I'd witnessed firsthand throughout my life. I was so absorbed in my preparation that I almost didn't notice when someone stopped beside my table. Only when a shadow fell across my laptop did I look up, directly into the face of my former boss, Alan Harris. Olivia Chen, he said, genuine surprise in his voice. I thought that might be you. I blinked, momentarily disoriented by this collision of my past and present lives. Alan had been my direct supervisor at the investment firm in Portland, a decent boss, if somewhat traditional in his outlook. Alan, I managed, closing my laptop. What are you doing in Chicago? Conference speaker, he replied, gesturing to his own badge. Panel on retirement planning for the mass affluent market. You? The same. I mean, not retirement planning. I'm speaking about financial education for women. I hesitated, then added, for my company, Finale. Alan's eyebrows rose. Your company? Last I heard, you'd moved to Chicago for some sort of incubator program. You've started your own firm? There was a note of surprise in his voice that might once have made me defensive, that familiar undertone suggesting it was unexpected that I, specifically, would have founded a company. But now I just smiled. Yes, we're building a financial education platform specifically designed for women with a focus on addressing the confidence gap in investing and wealth management. Interesting niche, Alan said, in the tone people use when they're not entirely convinced. How's it going? We have 300 beta users, strong engagement metrics, and we're finalizing our seed round with Lakefront Ventures next month. The words came out more assertively than I'd intended, but I didn't regret them. The facts spoke for themselves. Alan's expression shifted subtly, from polite interest to genuine reassessment. That's impressive, Olivia, truly. The team misses you in Portland, by the way. Harris and Associates isn't the same without your quarterly reports. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by the acknowledgement. How is everyone? Good, good. The usual office politics and client demands. He paused. I ran into your father at the Oregon Investment Council meeting last month. He mentioned you're doing some tech thing in Chicago. I guess this is it? The casual reference to my father landed like a small stone in still water, unexpected, creating ripples of reaction. My father had mentioned me? Had been aware enough of my work to reference it to a former colleague? This is it, I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral. How did he seem? Alan looked momentarily confused by the question. Seem? Fine, I suppose. Busy with client work. Mentioned your sister recently got married. Yes, in June. An awkward silence descended, Alan clearly sensing there was more to the story but professional enough not to pry. Well, he said finally, I should let you get back to your preparation. Maybe we'll catch up properly later? There's a reception for speakers tonight. I'd like that, I replied, meaning it. Despite the awkwardness, it was nice to see a familiar face from Portland, one not weighted with family complications. After Alan left, I sat staring at my closed laptop, mine no longer on my presentation but on this small, unexpected connection to my family. My father had mentioned my work, casually, without detail, but he'd acknowledged it. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something, a tiny thread still connecting us despite everything. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert, 15 minutes until I needed to be at the grand ballroom. I gathered my things quickly, pushing thoughts of my father aside. Right now, I needed to focus on the present, on the 500 people who were about to evaluate not just me, but the vision I'd sacrificed so much to pursue. The grand ballroom was even more imposing than I'd imagined. A cavernous space with ornate ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and rows upon rows of chairs stretching toward the back. A stage with a podium stood at the front, flanked by massive screens that would display my presentation. People were already filing in, filling the front rows first. A conference organizer intercepted me at the side entrance, guiding me to a small preparation room where other speakers huddled, reviewing notes or checking their appearances one last time. You're on in 10 minutes, she informed me, attaching a wireless microphone to my blazer. The moderator will introduce you, then the stage is yours for 30 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. I nodded, suddenly finding my mouth too dry to speak. The reality of what I was about to do crashed over me in waves. This wasn't a pitch to a small group of investors or a presentation at the Emerge facility. This was my first major public appearance as the founder of Finale, my introduction to the wider financial world. Water? The organizer offered me a bottle, which I accepted gratefully. Is it always this nerve-wracking? I asked after taking a long sip. She smiled kindly. Only the first time. After that, it's just normally terrifying. That startled a laugh out of me, breaking some of the tension coiled in my chest. Thanks. That's comforting. You'll be great, she assured me. Just remember why you're here, what message you need these people to hear. Her words resonated deeply. Why was I here? Not to impress with technical jargon or dazzling slides, but to convey a simple truth. That financial education had failed generations of women, and Finale was changing that reality. When the moderator called my name moments later, I walked onto the stage with clarity of purpose rather than nervous energy. The crowd was indeed massive, every seat filled with people standing along the back wall. The bright lights made it difficult to see individual faces, which was perhaps a blessing. Thank you for that introduction, I began, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. What if I told you that women are not inherently more risk-averse than men when it comes to investing? That the so-called confidence gap in financial decision-making isn't about ability, but about how financial concepts are presented and taught? I advanced to my first slide, a stark comparison of traditional financial education materials beside Finale's approach. For decades, the financial industry has taught concepts using language, metaphors, and examples that resonate primarily with men. Beating the market. Aggressive growth. Dominating the competition. This isn't just about vocabulary. It's about foundational assumptions regarding what motivates financial decisions. As I moved through my presentation, the initial nervousness faded completely, replaced by the flow of sharing ideas I deeply believed in. I explained how Finale's educational modules were structured around values. Research showed mattered more to women: financial security, caring for family, creating positive impact, while teaching the same fundamental concepts as traditional finance courses. Our early data shows that when financial education aligns with women's values and communication preferences, engagement soars, I explained, displaying our beta metrics. Women don't lack interest in investing. They lack educational materials that speak to their priorities and learning styles. The audience was attentive, many taking notes. When I concluded my prepared remarks and opened the floor for questions, hands shot up throughout the ballroom. The questions were thoughtful, challenging, but not combative, focused on how Finale's approach could scale beyond our initial user base. As the session ended and applause filled the room, I felt a curious mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I'd done it, spoken convincingly about our vision to hundreds of industry professionals. And based on the number of people now lining up to speak with me at the edge of the stage, I'd made an impression. The next hour passed in a blur of business card exchanges, brief conversations, and promises to follow up via email. Investment, managers interested in partnering with us, other founders seeking collaboration opportunities, journalists requesting interviews. By the time the crowd finally thinned, my voice was hoarse and my cheeks ached from smiling. Quite the rock star. "Reception," observed a familiar voice. Diana Powell stood at the edge of the stage, arms crossed, a hint of approval in her expression. "Diana," I exclaimed, genuinely surprised. "I didn't know you were here." I make a point of attending when our founders give their first major industry presentations. She handed me a bottle of water. "You represented Emerge well." Coming from Diana, this was high praise indeed. "Thank you. I wasn't expecting this level of interest." "Get used to it," she replied matter-of-factly. Finale is addressing a clear market need with a well-executed solution. That doesn't happen every day. We walked together toward the exit, navigating through the diminishing crowd. "The lakefront deal is progressing?" Diana asked. I nodded. "Term sheet next week, if all goes as planned. 1.5 million seed round. Good terms? 20% equity, standard investor protections, 2 board seats." I'd negotiated hard on the valuation, leveraging the interest we'd generated from 2 other potential investors. The final terms were fair, better than many first-time founders. "Received." Diana nodded approvingly. "Smart. And hiring plans?" 2 developers, a content specialist, and a marketing lead, once the round closes. Jennifer and I can't keep doing everything ourselves if we want to scale. Wise. Growth without infrastructure is just more efficient failure. Diana paused as we reached the lobby. "Join me for lunch? There's someone I'd like you to meet." The someone turned out to be Catherine Winters, editor-in-chief of Finance Forward, one of the most respected publications in the financial industry. Over salmon and asparagus in the hotel's upscale restaurant, Catherine explained why she'd sought me out. "We're planning a special issue on disruptors in financial education," she explained, her British accent lending extra gravity to her words. "After seeing your presentation, I believe Finale belongs in that conversation." "We're still very early stage," I cautioned, not wanting to oversell our progress. "Our full platform won't launch for another 3 months." Catherine waved this concern away. "Disruption happens at inception, not maturity. We want to feature the companies redefining how Americans think about and interact with financial education before they become household names. Diana, who had been quietly observing our exchange, leaned forward. Catherine doesn't waste her time on flash-in-the-pan startups, Olivia. Being featured in Finance Forward would put Finale on the radar of everyone who matters in the industry. The opportunity was extraordinary, the kind of exposure that could accelerate our growth beyond anything paid marketing could achieve. But a nagging concern tugged at me. Would this involve personal background? Family history? I asked carefully. The last thing I wanted was my family conflict becoming public fodder in a profile piece. Catherine studied me thoughtfully. We focus on the business and the founder's professional journey. Personal details only as they inform the company's mission. She paused. Is there something specific you're concerned about? I hesitated, aware of Diana watching me closely. No specific concerns. I just prefer to keep the focus on Finale's mission rather than my personal life. Understandable, Catherine nodded. I'll have one of our writers contact you next week to schedule a proper interview. We'd need about 2 hours of your time, plus a photo shoot. A photo shoot. My face in a national publication. My name and company profiled for industry leaders to see. The thought was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying, especially considering how information traveled in professional circles. Would my parents see it? Would Madison? Would they finally understand what I'd been protecting when I refused to surrender my savings? The rest of the conference passed in a whirlwind of sessions, networking, and impromptu meetings. By the final day, I'd collected over 100 business cards, scheduled dozens of follow-up calls, and even found potential candidates for our upcoming hiring push. The conference had exceeded my expectations in every possible way. As I packed my suitcase, in the hotel room on the last morning, my phone rang with an unknown Portland number. I answered hesitantly, half expecting a cold call. Olivia Chen, a woman's voice inquired. Yes, speaking. This is Patricia Dawson from the Portland Business Journal. I'm calling because we're working on a feature about Oregon natives making waves in the financial industry, and your name has come up repeatedly over the past few days at the Chicago conference. I sat on the edge of the bed, surprised. Oh? Several attendees mentioned your presentation on female-focused financial education. Given that you're from Portland originally, we'd love to include you in our feature. The Portland Business Journal, a publication my father almost certainly read. That many of my former colleagues would see. That would be shared throughout the professional community I'd left behind. Can I ask how you got my number? I inquired, playing for time while I processed this unexpected development. Alan Harris provided it. He spoke quite highly of your work, both at Harris and Associates and with your new venture. Alan. Of course. Our brief conversation had apparently made more of an impression than I'd realized. I see, I said, mind racing. What would this feature involve? Just a phone interview about your background in Portland, your new company, and how your Oregon roots influenced your business approach. We'd also request a high-resolution photo for publication. It was happening already, the ripples of recognition, spreading back toward Portland, toward the family and professional circles I'd left behind. Part of me wanted to decline, to keep my success contained to my new life in Chicago. But a stronger part recognized this as an opportunity to reshape the narrative, to be seen not as the daughter who abandoned family obligation, but as the founder building something meaningful. I'd be happy to participate, I heard myself saying. When would you like to schedule the interview? We set a time for the following week, and after hanging up, I sat motionless on the hotel bed, contemplating what had just transpired. In just 3 days, I'd gone from nervous first-time speaker to sought-after interview subject. Finale had gone from unknown startup to disruptor, worthy of industry publication coverage. Everything was accelerating. But the question lurking beneath my professional excitement was more personal. What would my family think when they inevitably saw these articles? Would they finally understand that my refusal hadn't been selfish but visionary? Would they see the value in what I'd protected? I pushed these questions aside as I finished packing. There was too much work ahead to dwell on family validation that might never come. Jennifer was waiting back in Chicago with development updates. Raymond would expect a full debrief on the conference connections. Diana would be watching closely to see how I leveraged this newfound attention. The Uber arrived to take me to O'Hare, and as we drove through Chicago's morning traffic, I found myself staring at the city skyline with a sense of belonging I hadn't expected to feel so soon. This was my city now, my future, my chosen path. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "How'd the last day go? Ready to come back and build an empire?" I smiled, typing back, "More than ready. Prepare for chaos. Things are about to get very interesting." The chaos began immediately. Upon my return, the promised term sheet from Lakefront Ventures arrived, triggering intensive negotiations and legal reviews. Catherine's writer from Finance Forward scheduled our interview, requiring hours of preparation. The Portland Business Journal sent preliminary questions that required careful consideration of how much personal history to include. And most unexpectedly, my inbox filled with messages from women who'd attended my conference presentation, sharing their own stories of financial exclusion, expressing excitement about Finale's approach, asking how they could help spread the E-word. "We need to accelerate our timeline," I told Jennifer during our first post-conference strategy session. "The interest level is higher than we anticipated. If we don't launch soon, someone else will fill this gap." Jennifer leaned back. In her chair, coffee mug cradled between her palms. "Acceleration means more resources. More resources means closing the funding round faster." "Exactly. I want to push for closing within 2 weeks, not the month we originally planned." She raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious. The legal work alone typically takes— I've already spoken with the lawyers. They can expedite if we pay a rush fee." Jennifer studied me for a moment. "This conference really lit a fire under you, didn't it?" I nodded, unable to fully articulate the shift that had occurred during those 3 days in the Palmer House, Hilton. It wasn't just about the external validation or the business opportunities. Something fundamental had changed in how I saw myself. No longer as the sister who had disappointed her family, but as a founder whose work mattered to thousands of women. "The timing feels right," I said simply. "Everything's aligning. The investor interest, the media attention, the market need. We need to move now." Jennifer set down her mug. "Then let's move." The next 2 weeks were the most intense of my professional life. Days blurred into nights as we finalized the investment terms, prepared legal documents, and continued refining the platform for launch. I survived on too much coffee and too little sleep, sustained by the growing certainty that we were building something that mattered. The Finance Forward interview and photo shoot consumed an entire day. The writer, a thoughtful woman named Elise, asked probing questions about Finale's origins, our educational philosophy, and the data supporting our approach. The photographer arranged shots of me in various poses around the Emerge facility, looking at code on a screen, gesturing toward a whiteboard, seated thoughtfully in a meeting area. "We want to show the founder as both visionary and practitioner," she explained. "The mind behind the concept and the hands building it." The Portland Business Journal interview was more concise, but required careful navigation around questions about my Portland background and departure. I emphasized the opportunity Chicago's startup ecosystem had provided, the mentorship available through Emerge, the perfect timing of the incubator program with my business concepts development. I didn't mention my family directly, but when asked what had inspired my move to Chicago, I answered truthfully. Sometimes you need to leave familiar surroundings to realize your full potential. Portland will always be my hometown, but Chicago is where Finale needed to be born. The funding round closed on schedule, the $1 to $5 million hitting our company account with a simple electronic transfer that belied its significance. One moment, we were a bootstrapped startup with dwindling personal savings. The next, we had runway for 18 months of aggressive growth. "We should celebrate," Jennifer insisted after the final documents were signed. "This is a milestone, worth marking." We booked a table at an upscale restaurant near the river, invited the core team that had helped us reach this point, Raymond, our lawyers, the contractors who'd been building our platform, and ordered champagne for a proper toast. To finale, Jennifer raised her glass. From idea to funded startup in less than a year. "And to the team that made it happen," I added, looking around the table with genuine gratitude. The celebration continued late into the evening, buoyed by good food, flowing wine, and the particular camaraderie that comes from shared accomplishment. As the night wound down and people began departing, Raymond lingered, uncharacteristically contemplative. "You've come a long way from that first coffee meeting," he observed, swirling the remnants of wine in his glass. "Thanks to your guidance," I acknowledged. "Those contacts you shared were pivotal." He shook his head. "I provided introductions. You did the convincing." He set his glass down. "Most founders I mentor never get this far. They hit the first major obstacle and pivot, away from their original vision. You didn't." His words carried unexpected weight. Raymond wasn't one for empty praise or sentimental reflections. "I couldn't afford to fail," I said simply. "Too much was riding on this." "The money," he nodded. "The savings you protected. Not just the money." I hesitated, then decided Raymond had earned my honesty. My sense of self. My belief that I had the right to pursue my own vision, even when others couldn't see its value. Raymond regarded me steadily. "That's the real foundation of Finale. Not the code or the content or the investment dollars. That conviction." We parted ways shortly after, but his observation stayed with me during the quiet Uber ride home. The conviction that my vision mattered, that my choices were valid, that I had the right to build something of my own, even at the cost of family approval. As I let myself into my apartment, now properly furnished and organized after months, in Chicago, my phone pinged with an email notification. The subject line made me pause. "Finance forward cover finalized." I opened it quickly, expecting perhaps a preview of the article or a publication update. Instead, I found myself staring at an image of my own face, on the cover of the magazine's upcoming issue. Me in profile, looking thoughtfully toward an unseen horizon. The headline read, "The Education Revolution: How Olivia Chen's Finale is Changing the Way Women Learn About Money." My breath caught. This wasn't just a feature article. It was the cover story. My face would be on newsstands, in waiting rooms, on coffee tables throughout the financial industry. Visible, undeniable. A public declaration of what I'd built from the savings I'd protected so fiercely. Before I could fully process this development, a text message arrived from an unexpected source. My father. "A colleague showed me the Portland Business Journal article about your company. Congratulations on your success. Simple, formal, no mention of our estrangement, or Madison's wedding, or the family conflict that had precipitated my move to Chicago. Just a professional acknowledgement of a professional accomplishment. But it was communication, the first direct contact beyond. Logistics about forgotten keys, an acknowledgement that what I was building had value, had gained recognition beyond my own belief in it. I started to type a dozen different responses, discarding each one. Thank you felt too brief. Launching into details about Finale felt too eager. Mentioning our conflict felt too heavy. Finally, I settled on, "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot coming from you." I hit send before I could overthink it further, then set my phone aside and moved to the window. Chicago's skyline sparkled. Against the night sky, a constellation of lights representing countless stories, countless dreams, countless journeys. Mine was just one among many. A daughter who had defied expectations, a founder who had protected her vision, a woman who had chosen herself when no one else would. The path had been harder than I'd imagined, lonelier at times than I'd been prepared for. But standing here now, with funding secured, recognition growing, and the faintest hint of family reconciliation on the horizon, I couldn't regret a single step. The finance forward cover, the Portland Business Journal feature, my father's text. The pieces were falling into place, creating a narrative far different from the one my family had imagined when they'd demanded my savings for Madison's wedding. I hadn't just preserved my money, I'd preserved my future. And now that future was unfolding in ways I'd barely dared to hope for. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning as I was reviewing our quarterly metrics. Subject line: Portland Business Leaders Gala, honoree information. I nearly marked it as spam before noticing the sender was legitimate. Dear Ms. Chen, it read, we are pleased to inform you that Finale has been selected for the Innovation in Financial Services Award at this year's Portland Business Leaders Gala. As a Portland native whose work is making national impact, your presence would honor our celebration of excellence in business leadership. Portland, the city I'd fled 14 months ago, heartbroken and determined. The place where my family had made it clear that my dreams mattered less than a wedding venue. I stared at the invitation, cursor hovering over the delete button. Why would I return to Portland to receive recognition from the very business community that included my father and his associates? People who had likely heard whispers about the family drama behind my sudden departure. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. Jennifer entered, tablet in hand, ready for our morning strategy session. You look like you've seen a ghost, she observed, settling into the chair across from my desk. I turned my monitor toward her. Not a ghost, an invitation. Jennifer scanned the email, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding. Ah, the prodigal daughter's triumphant return. I'm not going, I said firmly, turning the monitor back. Why not? It's perfect narrative closure. The hometown that didn't believe in you now wants to give you an award. Jennifer leaned forward. Plus, the PR value for Finale would be significant. Portland is an emerging tech hub with plenty of potential investors. It's not about the business angle, I sighed. It's about everything else. Jennifer studied me with the perceptive gaze that had made her such a valuable business partner. You mean it's about your family? Have you spoken with them recently? I shook my head. Communication had been minimal since Madison's wedding. Occasional text messages, a brief email exchange when the finance forward cover was published. Civility without warmth, acknowledgement without reconciliation. Maybe it's time, Jennifer suggested gently. Not for them, for you. Accept the award. Show them what you've built from the dreams they dismissed. I wanted to dismiss the idea immediately, but something in Jennifer's words resonated. The Olivia who had fled Portland had been running away from rejection. Perhaps the Olivia who returned could be moving toward something entirely different. Validation not from family, but from the professional world that now recognized what they hadn't. I'll think about it, I promised. That evening in my apartment, I pulled out a small jade pendant, my grandmother's necklace, the one my mother had given me years ago. I hadn't worn it since leaving Portland, but I kept it in my jewelry box as a reminder of family complexities. The heritage that shaped me, despite the pain it sometimes caused. My grandmother had started over in a new country with nothing. She had faced barriers I could barely imagine. And yet, she had built a life of dignity and purpose. Perhaps accepting this award in Portland would honor her resilience as much as my own. I drafted a brief professional acceptance email to the gala organizers, then sent a text to Ethan, my former colleague and still friend in Portland. Coming to town next month for a business award? Coffee while I'm there? His response came. Within minutes. Absolutely. About time you showed this town what you've accomplished. The decision made, I felt a curious mixture of apprehension and resolve. I was returning to Portland not as the daughter seeking approval, but as a founder being recognized for work that mattered. Work I had protected at great personal cost. The weeks leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation. Jennifer insisted on accompanying me for moral support and strategic networking. We arranged flights, booked hotel rooms, and prepared talking points about Finale's growth and impact. In 14 months, we had built something remarkable, a platform that was genuinely helping women gain financial confidence and investment, knowledge. Our user base had grown to nearly 10,000. Our engagement metrics outperformed industry standards, and we had secured a second round of funding that would fuel our expansion into new markets. These facts became my armor as the Portland trip approached. Concrete evidence that protecting my vision had been the right choice, regardless of what my family had believed. The morning of our flight to Portland, I stood before my closet, considering what to pack. Business attire, certainly, but which pieces? What version of myself did I want to present to the city I'd left behind? I selected a navy blue suit, powerful but not flashy. Conservative enough for Portland's business community, but with subtle details that reflected the confidence I'd developed in Chicago. And after a moment's hesitation, I packed my grandmother's jade pendant. Some connections deserved to be honored, even amid estrangement. Portland welcomed us with characteristic early autumn weather, misty rain beneath a pearl gray sky. As our rideshare traveled from the airport toward downtown, I found myself involuntarily mapping the city in relation to family landmarks. 20 minutes from here to my parents' house. 15 minutes to Madison and Brandon's new home in Sullivan Heights. 7 minutes to my father's office. The hotel was reassuringly anonymous, a luxury chain identical to those in any major city. No history here, no emotional landmines, just crisp sheets, abstract art, and room service. We checked in and spent the afternoon reviewing our presentation for a potential investor meeting Jennifer had arranged to maximize our Portland visit. Ethan texted, "Dinner tonight? I've made reservations at Laurier, the new place everyone's talking about." I accepted gratefully. Ethan's friendly presence would ease my re-entry into Portland's social spaces. Jennifer opted to stay behind, claiming jet lag, but clearly giving me space to reconnect with my old friend. Laurier was everything Ethan had promised. Elegant but unpretentious, with locally sourced ingredients and a wine list featuring Oregon vineyards. As we settled into our table, Ethan studied me with open curiosity. "Chicago's changed you," he observed. "You seem centered, more present." I smiled, genuinely touched by his perception. Building something meaningful does that, I guess. When you prove to yourself that your judgment was sound, other people's opinions matter less. "Including your family's?" he asked carefully. I nodded, sipping my wine. "Especially theirs. Have you heard anything about how they're doing?" Ethan hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "Your father mentions you occasionally, professionally, when your company is referenced in industry news. Your mother joined the Portland Garden Society board. Madison is expecting a baby in the spring." The last piece of information landed like a stone in still water. Madison pregnant. Soon to be a mother. My potential role as aunt hanging in the uncertain space of our estrangement. "They don't know you're here," Ethan added quietly. "At least you haven't been mentioned in that context." I nodded, absorbing this. The gala isn't exactly a private event. They might find out. "Would that be so terrible?" Ethan asked. A neutral setting, professional context, plenty of witnesses to ensure civil behavior. He had a point. If reconciliation, or at least communication, were ever to happen, perhaps a public event offered the safest parameters. I didn't come for them, I said firmly. I came to accept recognition for finale. What we've built matters, regardless of their opinions. Of course it does, Ethan agreed easily. But family is complicated. Success doesn't erase history. It just gives you a stronger position from which to address it. The gala was held at the Portland Art Museum, its grand hall transformed with elegant lighting and table settings. Jennifer and I arrived fashionably on time, checking in at the registration table where I received a small badge identifying me as an award recipient. Ready for your triumphant hometown moment? Jennifer whispered as we entered the main hall. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, adjusting my grandmother's pendant beneath my collar. The evening proceeded with the predictable rhythm of such events, cocktails and networking, followed by dinner and speeches, building toward the awards. Presentation. I shook hands with Portland business leaders, many of whom seemed vaguely familiar from my previous life. Several mentioned reading about finale in national publications, expressing surprise and admiration that one of Portland's own was making such an impact. I was midway through a conversation with a potential investor when I felt a shift in the energy of the room, a particular quality of attention that made me turn toward the entrance. My parents stood in the doorway, my mother elegant in a navy dress remarkably similar to my suit, my father distinguished in his familiar charcoal gray. Madison wasn't with them. They had come. They knew I was here. Jennifer appeared at my elbow, having noted my sudden distraction. Your parents? I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. They came to see you receive recognition, she noted quietly. That's something. Before I could respond, the program began, forcing everyone to their assigned tables. Mine was near the front, alongside other award recipients. My parents were seated near the back, close enough to witness but not to interact. The awards portion of the evening arrived after dinner plates were cleared. I listened with partial attention as other business leaders were recognized for various achievements: community impact, sustainability initiatives, job creation. Finally, the presenter announced the innovation category. Our next award recognizes outstanding contribution to financial services through technological innovation. This year's recipient has created a platform that addresses a significant gap in financial education, particularly for women investors. My heartbeat quickened as the presenter continued, outlining Finale's mission and impact. The words sounded strange in this context, my professional achievement being celebrated in the city where my personal value had been so thoroughly questioned. Please welcome to the stage, Portland native and founder of Finale, Olivia Chen. The applause was genuine as I made my way to the podium. Under the bright lights, I could barely make out individual faces in the audience, yet I remained acutely aware of my parents' presence somewhere in the darkness. Thank you, I began, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening beneath the surface. Financial education has traditionally failed women, not through lack of information, but through communication that doesn't address their values and priorities. Finale exists because every person deserves the tools and confidence to build their financial future. I continued briefly, outlining our mission and growth, expressing gratitude to the Portland business community for this recognition. As I concluded, I found myself adding something unplanned. I learned the value of persistence and vision in this city, from a grandmother who started over with nothing but determination. Her legacy reminds me that what we build for ourselves matters, not just financially, but as a foundation for the lives we choose to create. The applause followed me back to my seat, where Jennifer squeezed my hand in silent support. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur, my awareness focused on the inevitable moment when the formal program would end and mingling would resume. Would my parents approach? Should I make the first move? What was the protocol for acknowledging family at a professional event after 14 months of estrangement? As the closing remarks concluded and people began rising from their tables, I made a decision. Taking a deep breath, I turned to Jennifer. I'm going to speak with them. She nodded, unsurprised. I'll run interference if needed. I moved through the crowd with deliberate steps, my heart racing despite my outward composure. They were still at their table, my father standing as, if preparing to leave, my mother seated but watching the room with careful attention. Her eyes found mine as I approached, widening slightly in recognition. Olivia, my father said, his voice formal but not cold. Congratulations on your award. Thank you, I replied, standing before them with practiced professional poise. I'm surprised to see you here. My mother rose slowly, her expression complex. We read about the award in the business journal. It seemed appropriate to attend. An awkward silence followed, heavy with unspoken history. They had come, not tried to speak with me beforehand, not reached out upon learning I would be in Portland. But they had come to witness this moment of professional validation. Your company is doing well, my father observed, a statement, rather than a question. The financial press has been quite positive. Yes, I agreed simply. We're helping women gain confidence with investment decisions, making financial education more accessible and relevant. My mother's gaze dropped to the jade pendant visible at my collar, recognition flickering in her eyes. You're wearing Grandmother Lynn's necklace. I touched it reflexively. Some traditions are worth preserving. The weight of that statement hung between us, an acknowledgement that while some family patterns had been broken, others remained valuable. My mother nodded slightly, understanding the nuance. Madison is expecting, she said suddenly. In April, a girl. A niece. Family continuing, evolving, despite the fractures. I heard, please give her my congratulations. Another silence, this one less strained. Finally, my father cleared his throat. What you've built. It's impressive, Olivia. A real contribution. The words were simple but represented a seismic shift, from dismissal of my vision to acknowledgement of its value. Not an apology, not reconciliation, but a recognition that I had been right to protect what I believed in. Thank you, I said again, meaning it deeply. That means a lot, coming from you. We didn't embrace. There were no tearful declarations or dramatic forgiveness. Just this small, significant moment of mutual recognition, the beginning of a potential new understanding. As they prepared to leave, my mother hesitated. Will you be in Portland long? Just until tomorrow afternoon. She nodded, then said carefully, perhaps breakfast before you go? The three of us? The invitation hung between us, tentative, imperfect, but genuine. Not a restoration of what was, but potentially the first thread of something new. I'd like that, I replied. Text me the details? They left shortly after, leaving me standing amid the continued celebration, feeling strangely lightened. Jennifer appeared at my side, question in her eyes. Not a Hollywood reunion, I explained, but a beginning maybe. Later that night, in the quiet of the hotel room, I stood at the window looking out at Portland's skyline. The city lights reflected on the rain-slicked streets, familiar and foreign simultaneously. I touched my grandmother's pendant, thinking about heritage and choice, about the family we're born into and the lives we choose to create. My phone chimed with a text, my mother suggesting a cafe near the hotel for breakfast. Simple, practical, but reaching across the divide nonetheless. As I confirmed the time, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. 14 months ago, I had left Portland broken-hearted but determined, carrying dreams my family couldn't see the value of. I returned not seeking their approval, but having proven, to myself most importantly, that my vision had been worth protecting. The reconciliation, if it came, would not be about returning to old patterns, but about building new understanding. My family might never fully comprehend why I had made the choices I did, but perhaps they could respect the woman and the company those choices had created. I would board a plane tomorrow afternoon, returning to Chicago and the life I had built. There. But something had shifted in Portland's familiar air. Not forgiveness exactly, not forgetting, but perhaps the first tentative step toward a new kind of family relationship. One based not on obligation or expectation, but on mutual respect for the adults we had each become. My name is Olivia Chen. This is the story of how I refused to surrender my dreams for someone else's expectations, built something meaningful from rejection, and discovered that sometimes standing your ground is the truest form of belonging. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.